welcome back to another episode of the Lonely Liberal Podcast. I am your host, Nick Zankin, and I'm so happy to have you on this lovely Sunday. We got a great show for you today. We're going to be going through the news with Rick, and we got a lot to talk about. So without further ado, let's get to it. Alrighty, we are back with Rick. Rick, what's up, man?
Hey. Good to be back. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, and before we get into it, I want to warn you, and we're going to talk about it at the very end of the show, but you got two questions specifically directed at you this week that I will be asking.
I'm nervous.
Yes, I'm going to keep you on ice. Get prepared. The listeners should be holding their breath, well, for maybe not a full hour, but... And when they hear the questions, they'll be like, this is what it was all about. But they are specifically directed at you, and
oh boy,
those are my favorite. But we got a lot to talk about this week, and obviously the big news of the week, actually there are multiple big news, but the obvious biggest news is basically the assassination of Charlie Kirk, which I think assassination is the right word. I was going back, like, when does it become an assassination and not just a murder? I don't know. Rick, do you know when the difference matters?
I'm not sure. I mean, I feel like it's the right word because he was a public figure and a political public figure. So
yeah,
I feel like it fits. I mean, it's not just politics. Obviously, like John Lennon was assassinated. So I'm not sure exactly what the definition of, but yeah, I think it definitely makes sense here.
And it's definitely, I think you're right. It's probably the public figure makes it especially true. But yeah, anyway, so he was assassinated at the Utah Valley University this week doing one of his like prove me wrong type things, which frankly, to give him credit, have become an absolute cultural phenomena, this sitting at the booth, just arguing with liberal college kids. I mean, this is like basically a cultural thing. So, you have to hats off. He was shot he was like sniped from someone hundreds of yards away. And yeah, it was brutal. There immediately was just videos going around social media. It was absolutely disgusting. I actually found out about it literally as I was starting to record Wednesday's show, so the listeners can hear my actual immediate thoughts. Then it was before they had even announced he was died. It was literally just happening. So you can hear me being audibly frazzled because it's obviously disgusting and jarring and horrible. Since then, so much of the response, so much has been going on. It's been so crazy. And Rick, I want you to hear your thoughts before I launch in because there's so much to talk about. And we have some clips to play. I don't know. Maybe we should do you think we should lead with the clips or do you want to go before we go clip?
Yeah, I guess I'll just say, obviously my first impression was it's awful. And political violence can always snowball like we see in other countries. So it's terrible that it happened. I obviously feel bad for the people that witnessed it, including his immediate family. And yeah, it was pretty bad. I feel like because of the Trump assassination attempt, when you hear public figure got shot, you think maybe they'll live through it. But then once the gory videos started circulating, it was oh, there's no way, obviously. So yeah, and then of course, the whole thing was terrible. I had a slow work week too, so I was following it. I was way too deep into the MAGA worlds of Twitter and Facebook this past week.
Same.
As it unraveled, spent way too much time in those circles. We'll talk about, all the responses are interesting for a variety of reasons. He's kind of being held up as this saint and this martyr for free speech and conservative values. But yeah, obviously the shooting itself was terrible. And, I think we'll talk about the responses from all over the political spectrum now. Personally, I think everybody should condemn the act of violence. But beyond that, I don't think there's any responsibility to honor him or say he was this great man when I don't believe he was. And I think, in fact,
I agree with that. That's
in
exactly
fact,
right.
He spread a lot of really, really hateful, terrible messages to millions and millions of young people. So I don't think people should necessarily be surprised at the variety of the reactions, whether it's praising him or criticizing him, because he was such a controversial and, in my opinion, hateful figure. What about you? What was your first impression?
Yeah, I mean, very, very similar. No one should be. I said this on the show. I don't believe in the death penalty, period. Outside maybe the Hitlers of the world, the Saddam Husseins of the mass murdering, genocide people. So one, I don't believe in it from that point of view. I don't think anyone should just be killed for any of their actions, almost, period. And I know maybe that's a controversial take, but that's how I feel. And I think gun violence is horrible. Like, I think gun violence is so scary and so bad. And, I've been seeing people online saying, all this outpouring for Kirk and, what about this guy who died or that guy who died, or even, how about the, genocide in Gaza? How come we're not seeing the same outpouring for that? Well, I hear that. I mean, the reality is obviously this is maybe the biggest right-wing political podcaster, right? So obviously he's going to get more attention than someone that isn't known to the public that got shot this week or a shooting that happened. But the point isn't even like, how come this and not that? It's all of this is so freaking terrible, Like, it's a disaster. It's a tragedy. And frankly, people just don't have the mental bandwidth to follow all the horror that gun violence causes. So it's, to me, just a part of a larger problem of just gun violence being out of control. And this guy who, like you said, basically stood for the exact opposite of everything we stand for, I guess, getting shot. But I don't blame, like, I think as a society, we need to just be able to go, all right, that guy just sounds nuts, and that's it, and that's the end of it. And if you want to argue with him, I mean, you can go argue with him. So that's how I feel about that. I don't think people who don't like him and don't view him like, us, we don't think we have to be crying and sobbing over his death. That being said, I think I do feel very emotional and terrified for just the concept of the state of the country, I think that it's fucking disgustingly sad how horrifying the country has become in general, and just like how the state of the country, like, that makes me feel emotional. But what I wanted to talk about, and I think what's almost even more important, well, equally important, is the response, and particularly the response from the president, right? That matters a lot. So I want to play the clips, Rick, so we can hear what you have to think about this. You may have already heard them. Have you heard these clips?
I've heard some of them. They are not good.
What did you think about what I just said, by the way? Did that make sense? I kind of monologued a bit.
Yeah, no, I think that was well said. Yeah, I think, like, first and foremost, it was awful. Secondly, we're concerned about, where this could lead to. And we absolutely do not need escalating political tensions in the country right now.
No, and so what we're going to do, I'm just going to let the listeners know. Both you and I are about to criticize Trump a lot. And I can just hear the conservative, because we have a lot of, Rick, I don't know if you're aware of this. We have a lot of conservative listeners. And in fact, we have a ton of moderate listeners. So I'm sure a lot of the people listening right now are conservative or potentially were fans of his. And they're going to hear us go after Trump, and they're going to say, you fucking assholes, you're adding fuel to the fire. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this, you guys should just be, holding hands in solidarity and blah, 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 blah. And if the president of the United States behaved normally, I could actually maybe see myself to agreeing with them. If, like, the politicians were normal and everything was normal, you know what? No one should be celebrating this dude's death. No one should be celebrating anyone's death, frankly, I think, other than, again, the most heinous humans in the world. But that's not what happened. And we're going to play the clips to show you. So I just want to I want people, when they get mad at what we're about to say, I want them to remember the clips we're about to play, right? Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair.
Because the president of the United States is the leader of the entire country. That means everyone, and should be uniting us. Okay, so here we go. So this is Trump on Fox and Friends 2 days ago, after the obviously the assassination of Kirk, and this is what he had to say.
How do we fix this country? How do we come back together?
I'll tell you something that's going to get me in trouble, but I couldn't care less. The radicals on the right oftentimes are radical because they don't want to see crime. They don't want to see crime.
Worried about the border.
They're saying, we don't want these people coming in. We don't want you burning our shopping centers. We don't want you shooting our people in the middle of the street. The radicals on the left are the problem. And they're vicious, and they're horrible, and they're politically savvy.
Just Fox and Friends begging him to unite the country and him just going, it's the left's fault. And he said that in the official response. Many reps and they've all said it too. But I just thought that one is the most egregious because A, he said he couldn't care about uniting the country, and B, he proceeded to explain why he doesn't care about uniting the country. And I just want people to understand, like, dude, I know right-wing people say, oh, liberals use the word Nazis too much, fascist too much, racist too much, homophobe too much. And you know what? In a lot of ways, like normal schmoes on the internet, maybe they do. But when me and you are saying, like, calling Trump a fascist, or if we call Trump like saying this is like a fascist or this is racist or whatever, we're not saying all his supporters are fascist and racist. We're saying the president, who we should be able to be critical of, is doing something like that. And maybe some of his supporters are, but I don't think that's ever what we're implying. So I hope that that's what. I don't want people to call people who support someone who's horrible necessarily horrible, even if it could be true. But that doesn't even matter because the president of the United States, when asked, should you unite the country, said, I don't care to. I don't know. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, that's Trump's. It's sadly predictable how he'd react. And again, that was before he said that before they even caught the shooter. And he's just assuming the shooter is this leftist, I don't know.
They said it the day of. We didn't even know the shooter and we'll talk about the shooter in a bit too, but immediately.
I've been surprised at how many conservatives on social media have been responding with things like, this is what happens when you call the Republicans fascist, and this is what happens with all the leftist divisive rhetoric. Like, to me, Donald Trump is so obviously the most responsible person for dividing our politics into the sad state that it is in now. He's 100%. The most negative, antagonistic, bitchy president in the country's history. I think that goes without saying, and some people might think that's a dramatic statement, but it really isn't.
Who else?
Right.
Like, who are we talking about here? Like, of course, yeah, no, I think you're 100%. That's not even a hot take, what other president has Twitter rants and like just all the shit he does?
Right. So to come out swinging before the shooter's even caught, saying we're blaming the leftists that want to burn down your shopping centers and kill people, and I couldn't care less about bringing the country together, which is the president's central duty.
I think the number one job. I was actually thinking about that's the only point of the fucking job is to unite the country. If you really think about it. And that's why Biden failed at the end, because he couldn't speak and he couldn't unite the country. It's not necessarily his policies that was the problem with Biden. It's he couldn't lead because he couldn't speak. He wasn't alive.
And the shooting of Kirk was instantly condemned in the strongest words by all prominent Democratic politicians. Obama, Biden, the elect Schumer, all the big elected ones in the strongest terms, with no caveats about let's talk about right-wing violence because the right wing in this country is really the one to blame. Like, none of them added that, which Trump had to add. So that's why I'm a little bit confused by a lot of the I think a lot of the conservative algorithms are feeding like examples of one random leftist on Twitter, like making a meme about Charlie Kirk's death and being like, see, they're celebrating it.
Yep, I completely agree.
They're dancing in the streets. And it's like, we can't control what one 18-year-old kid on Twitter says that's now a major Fox News story. Like, what we can control and defend is how our leaders react. And the Democratic leaders are reacting with unity and condemning the violence. And Trump is just dividing everyone further and ramping up the hatred even more.
100%. I think that's exactly right. And it's so hypocritical because when the guy who tried to assassinate Trump, right, who shot Trump in the ear, when it turned out that he was a Republican, no one said, this is the Republicans' fault for the assassination of Trump. And to your point, we didn't even know who the shooter was. And turns out he's unenrolled. And it wouldn't even have mattered if he was a Democrat anyway. There's so much wrong with this country. And one of the most infuriating and sad parts of this country, and I'm completely guilty of it, Rick, like you were saying, just scouring the internet after the thing on Kirk happened. Every single time there's some sort of shooting or big problem or whatever, there's this like hold the breath moment, and you're just like, oh God, I hope it's not a fucking Democrat, or, oh, I hope it's just not someone on my team and whatnot. And that's so sad because, of course, it doesn't matter. Like, the dude who shot at Trump's ear trying to kill him isn't representative of Republicans. If this dude was a Democrat, even though he's not, it wouldn't be representative of Democrats. Like, the school shooters' political identities aren't representative of the political, you know what I mean? I don't think any of that matters. And the fact that we're all so terrified that it's going to be someone on our team who did the horrible thing, and that's the way we're thinking about things, it just shows a state of affairs that is just so embarrassing and sad, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And just like for years after 9/11, when you would hear there's any sort of attack, many Muslim Americans would express that, they're just praying, please don't let it be a Muslim, because that's just going to ratchet up the hate and prejudice against all American Muslims even more.
Yep.
And I feel like now we're seeing that with the aggression and attack on trans people. Like, seconds before Charlie Kirk was assassinated, he was answering a question about trans shooting because he has promoted this myth that trans people are primarily behind a lot of these mass shootings. And somebody was asking him the question to basically fact check him on the spot, saying, do you actually know how many trans people have committed mass shootings? And he said too many. And then a few seconds later, he was shot. But so now you have trans people throughout the US and probably throughout the world, like, terrified, being like, please don't let this shooter happen to turn out to be trans, because like people are already aiming their guns at trans people. Like, people are like just like Charlie Kirk was expressing at the time, like, they're already hungry for excuses to go after trans people. And I felt that too. Like, I was like, I hope the shooter doesn't happen to turn out to be trans, because everything's set up to just use this as an excuse to take away their rights more and blame them for all our country's problems.
100%. I didn't even want them to be a Democrat, even broader terms, like, because it was the same exact thought. Like, it's getting so scary. And I just, to your point about Trump being the most divisive president in at least our lifetimes, and definitely in modern American history, I think the number one example of this, when you go, how could we get here? How could we get to a point where, there's assassination threats on the governor of Pennsylvania. There's the literal assassination of the Minnesota state senator just a few months ago, which, by the way, Trump did not go to her funeral and didn't even care. So interesting on that one. And all this horrible stuff with Kirk, with Trump, and even like, how did this happen? And I think it's gonna get an eye roll originally, but I want people to stay with me now. Like, it's the January 6th stuff. And one thing about January 6th that gets glossed over all of the time is that 9 people died, many of them police officers, right? And they're all pardoned. So let's just put that into perspective. The acting president of the United States incited, whether you want to call it a riot, insurrection. I know I've seen people in the comments get upset about the jargon. Let's even go your way. We'll call it a riot. Incited a definitely political riot, which led to people breaking into one of the government's main buildings, killing 9 people, then years later being pardoned. How is that not a stamp of approval of political violence? And how does that not set the tone of this is what is okay, And I feel like that right there is the number one action you can point to blame why this country is going this way. I don't know, Rick, if you agree.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And you mentioned the Minnesota shooting a few months ago of Melissa Hortman. So again, like, for people feeling like the left is going after Kirk or celebrating this death, like, look up all the prominent elected and formerly elected Democrats' response, the immediate condemnations and calls for prayers and unity, and then compare it to this, when after Melissa Hortman and her dog were shot, as well as a fellow senator was shot but lived the same night, Trump was asked if he's going to call Minnesota Governor Tim Walz to offer his condolences and discuss the response. Trump said, quote, "I don't really call him. I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out. I'm not calling him. Why would I call him? I could call him and say, hi, how you doing? The guy doesn't have a clue. He's a mess. So, I could be nice and call him, but why waste time?"
Yep. And this matters. And I think you nailed it right when you said, who gives a crap if some random person from Vassar, calls everyone fascist all the time? Who cares? And in the same token, who cares if there's some dude on 4chan who's just saying racist, crazy shit all the time? I don't care. I really care more about what the actual leaders of the country are doing. And it's shit like that. Or, Rick, you could say Mike, the Utah senator, right? He tweeted the photo of him saying, this is what happens when Marxists try to take over. And then the freaking ring camera of the dude in the Mike Myers mask moments before he assassinated her. And then he's like, oh my God, Kirk is a hero. Kirk is a patron saint and blah, 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 blah. And again, that response wouldn't be weird if you didn't actively shit all over Democrats dying months before, I wouldn't even be judging people for being really sad about this and saying all this stuff because you know what? You're allowed to like your guys and look, I don't like him. I don't want him to get shot either, but I'm not going to be posting about how sad I am. I'm sad about the state of the country. But the hypocrisy is what makes it so frustrating, and I think there's such immediate proof of hypocrisy just because there was this previous assassination of her just a few months ago, right?
Yeah, and I think what I'm most concerned about too moving forward is this is just a giant example to me of how the social media algorithms are creating two different realities for people. And of course, that's not a new idea, and it's been happening for, 15 years at this point, but it's so extreme now where so much of the conservative response was why isn't everyone condemning this? You don't have to agree with what Charlie said, but you shouldn't support people getting shot. What is happening to our country? They're living in a world where this shooting is fitting into their narrative about how the left is out of control with violence in every major city, and the right and Christian values are under attack, which I don't agree with any of that.
Neither do I.
But the way they're responding of just they're acting like the country has totally gone to shit. You would have thought Obama was dancing in the street over Charlie Kirk's death. The way that the right is reacting, so outraged. And again, we can't, just like you said, there's always going to be examples of extreme people on social media, but you can't use that and base your opinion off what half the country is thinking, because in reality, the actions
of the shooters too. It's the same thing. You can't, this Republican shot someone, all MAGA are horrible, or vice versa. You know what I mean? It's just stupid. This extrapolating viewpoints from one nut job, Anyway, I cut you off. Sorry. Continue. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's extrapolating. It's saying this theme, which I saw a lot on conservative social media this week, of what is happening to our country. The Charlie Kirk death is evidence of what we already think, which is that leftist and immigrant violence is taking over our countries. And it's about damn time we fight back. That's the sort of dangerous rhetoric that I'm really concerned about, because it seems like they're just living in a totally different reality where they're being fed news that everyone that's not conservative is celebrating this. Whereas I'm not seeing that at all.
And even more proof of this, and I think you and I've talked about this off the show, but I often get comments and emails, which I love, by the way, and if you're thinking this, please send them in, but that are you guys are I'm a conservative, but you guys seem like the most reasonable Democrats I've heard, or you guys seem like normal and blah, 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 and thank you. But, because I don't feel like we're normal at all. But what I always think when I read that is, actually, we're pretty opinionated. We try to be very fair on the show, but I don't think we're are we actually more reasonable than the average Democrat online, And because in our world, it doesn't seem like that. Because like you said, I don't see a lot of this maniac that they're referencing. And maybe it's out there and our algorithms are also shielding us from maniacs, But I think it's what you said. I think they're getting fed insanity by randos on X or whatever, on Reddit, and they're getting talked about like it's a bigger deal. And that causes people like you and I to get frustrated, and they should be very sympathetic to this, because this is exactly what happens when someone on the right says some racist crap, and then they get all blamed, and they're like, what the hell? Why are you calling us all racist? You know, like, it's whatever this is what's happening. And you're so right. This is what's dividing the country. And then you add the president fueling stoking the flames of this on top of it. I feel like this is what's happening to this country. This is exactly what's happening to this country. You know, like, this is it. I think you nailed it.
Right. They're reacting to some imaginary or unrealistic idea of how the left is reacting. So then they're getting fired up. And then they're praising Charlie Kirk as this martyr. You know, you're seeing all these posts with him and his family, and all these videos quoting his quotes about Christianity and Jesus, and like really lifting him up as this martyr and this hero. And then all that honoring Charlie and escalating rhetoric from the right. Then you see the left response and being like, okay, well, now I feel like you goaded me into this argument about whether or not he was a good guy. And there are a lot of receipts that he wasn't a good guy and said a lot of really terrible things. So like, you have this back and forth where like nobody's really discussing this with each other. They're arguing against their like imagined interpretation of what the other side is, and it just keeps escalating.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly said. And we haven't even really talked about the shooter who we've just starting to learn stuff about, Tyler Robinson, which, by the way, what a crazy story about not just him, but him getting turned in. He told his dad, and his dad drove him to the police office and turned him in with him. His dad being a former U.S. Marshal. But I think what really speaks to what we're talking about here is, so on the bullets, he like carved in a bunch of random like sentences, and they're not really political thoughts. They're just like kind of trolly gamer kind of stuff in a way. And it's exactly, he feels like a radicalized gamer almost, like from just what we've limitedly known from him. He went as Trump as in Halloween in 2017. He went as Trump, but we don't really, it doesn't, he was unenrolled. It doesn't really feel political. It feels almost like a gamer in a way. Like, and I keep saying that just because I've never seen sentences like that outside of Twitch logs, and stuff like that. I like games, but yeah, I mean, it just shows you, like, it's like the internet has cooked people's brains, and then you have the president of the United States putting Tinder on it and like just making it worse. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on the shooter?
Yeah, it does seem like, I mean, and I feel like this is kind of the second or third recent example of like, we learn a shooter has been like terminally online. With this new one, I think they mentioned he was a fan of Nick Fuentes, who's like this alt-right influencer, edgelord. I don't know if our audience all knows that term, but like,
can you define that for the term?
Yeah, edgelord is like the type of troll online that's just constantly saying things way over the line, like saying the most offensive things anybody can possibly think up, that they think are funny or thoughtful in some way, but to everyone else, it's just like, you're an edgelord. Like, you're just saying needlessly offensive things. For no reason. And that feels like this one, like, one of the shooter's high school friends described him as terminally online Reddit kid. Yeah. So it is kind of sad that we're seeing that now. He comes from a Trump-loving family who are all registered Republicans and all supported Trump. People said he supported Trump previously, but recently expressed that he didn't like him anymore. So it's tough to know exactly what's going through his head. Obviously, mental illness goes without saying. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't make it any better, but if he wasn't a cis white man from a MAGA family, if, let's say, he was from an openly liberal Democratic family, or if he was trans or gay or Muslim, the attacks from the Republicans would just be unbelievable right now. It would be like, this is everything we've said, all this leftist rhetoric, this is all to blame. Like, we already quoted what Trump said. Trump was already blaming all that stuff, even though there's no evidence for it. So like, they're not going to change their tune just because the evidence came out that this was a straight white dude from a MAGA family. But, like, it's important to say that.
If this was an illegal immigrant who had done this, the National Guard would probably be in every single city right now. And I don't even think that's that dramatic.
Definitely.
And what a sad state of affairs. And before we close on this, because we talked a lot about it, but it's so important, I think. You could say, oh, all this, like we're saying, online people care so much about him. And, Trump is just emotional and that's why he's saying stuff because, he lost a friend. He lost like someone he thought of as a son I saw online. I just want people to hear this clip does Trump really even care about this guy? This is a reporter asking Trump how he's doing following the shooting.
My condolences to you, sir. My condolences on the loss of your friend Charlie Kirk. May I ask, sir, personally, how are you holding up over the last day and a half, sir?
I think very good. And by the way, right there, you see all the trucks. They've just started construction of the new ballroom for the White House, which is something they've been trying to get, as you know, for about 150 years. And it's going to be a beauty. It'll be an absolutely magnificent structure. And I just see all the trucks. We just started, so it'll get done very nicely, and it'll be one of the best anywhere in the world, actually. Thank you very much.
Yep. He doesn't give a shit. I just want people to know that. If you're looking to Trump and you're trying, he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't give a shit about anyone. He just wants to have statues and renovations that have his name on it so that when he dies, there's a Trump ballroom and people have to remember him forever because he has a ballroom named after him in the White House. That's all he cares about. He doesn't care about any human, frankly, other than himself. And we have no evidence to show that he doesn't. And, again, I'm not saying his followers are like that at all. I don't think that's the case, but I do think it is the case with him because that's all it shows,
Yeah,
he's
definitely.
a piece of shit.
He couldn't care less. This was somebody that he said he loves and was a close friend, and he obviously could not care less.
And I mean, we know it's true because of all the ways he's reacted before. Anyway, and speaking of Trump, and but actually a good transition here is, so this shooting has caused so much conspiracy theories online, Rick. I don't know if you've seen so many. I've seen it's because Kirk wasn't in Netanyahu's pocket anymore and he got him killed. I've heard, actually Trump got him killed because of all the Epstein drama to distract from. And I don't think so. I will say, though, it was good timing for the Epstein drama because this week, actually, before Kirk got assassinated, there was so much Epstein stuff coming out, and it really did feel like the momentum was starting to build. I don't think it'll go away, hence why I think that isn't a real legitimate conspiracy theory, but there's a ton of Epstein stuff to talk about this week.
Yeah, seriously. I don't believe in any of the conspiracies, but yeah, it did tamper down the Epstein news, which was in full force before it happened. And I think hopefully it will return with as much force, but I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, the past week had some revelations.
Of 100%. And the most interesting to me, at least, being the birthday book. We talked about this a month or two ago. For our listeners who don't remember Maxwell, his partner, had put together his birthday book for his, I think, 50th birthday. And basically had all his close friends write a birthday card and stapled it together and called it a book. And in that book, you have Clinton, and now, of course, you have Trump. And I remember the Wall Street Journal had reported on it saying, we have his thing. It had all those creepy quotes about how there's like secret little secrets, or like we have a naughty little curiosity. There's something weird. Read it.
Enigmas never age. May every day be another wonderful secret.
That's a disaster.
Not creepy at all.
Dude, if I sent that to you, and you're not you'd be like, I think we can't be friends anymore.
Forward it to the FBI.
Yeah, seriously. Right to Kosh's lap. So Trump had originally sued Rupert Murdoch and Wall Street Journal, saying it was fake, it's not real, blah, blah, blah. I don't even draw, because it's like written in stanzas, and the shape of the letter has like an outline of a nude woman, and then his signature is like the pubic hair. It's crazy. People should Google it. And yeah, he was, this is fake, this is fake, this is fake. And now we have the birthday book. It's come to light. We now have it. It's physically out there. They're now accusing that it was forged, which is very interesting that someone 25 years ago would forge a Donald Trump birthday card and knowing that he'd be president, even though at the time he was a registered Democrat. But anyway, so yeah, the card is real. It definitely exists. And yeah, it was exactly as reported. What do you think, Rick?
Yeah, I think, of course, Trump has to deny it, and he would till the very end. Because if you believe that this is real, which I do.
Same.
Then it's impossible to think Trump wasn't participating in Epstein's crimes, or at least were such close friends that he was okay with all of it and witnessed all of it, because it's such undisputable evidence that they were close friends with just the text of the letter and
just being even in the letter to
and talking about a wonderful secret and the whole thing. Giving the birthday book, being part of the birthday book in general, like, it's such undeniable evidence that they were such close friends, and therefore Trump, at the bare minimum, witnessed he was doing, but let's be honest, was participating in it based on the creepy nature of the comments in the book. So it's like, if you believe it's real, like, that's kind of it. You know what I mean? It's like,
Totally.
how much more evidence do you need that Trump is partly liable for what Epstein did and knew about it? Like, you don't need any more. Like, this is such creepy, gross evidence that they were best friends, in addition to obviously the pictures and videos of them partying together and Epstein saying they were best friends and all the other evidence like that. It's obviously Trump and probably his base are going to keep saying it's fake, because like this should kind of be like the ceiling of the book if it's real. Like, this is it.
And how could it be fake? The only way it was forged years ago. You know what I mean? In the 90s. With what purpose? And what's so funny, I was watching C-SPAN, and that's how you know my life is sad, because I was watching C-SPAN for the show. And one of the, I forget who it was a rep or a senator, was like, why don't we just have like a signature expert come and authenticate if this is real or not, and that will put to bed any kind of conspiracy. And literally every Republican voted against it. Why would you vote against this? You know what I mean? Like, if you thought it was fake, wouldn't that be your instant out, right? To show that it was fake.
Right.
So that's weird. And yeah, at the same time, Schumer, who we give a lot of flack on this show too sometimes, he did this kind of like procedural vote at the Senate to try to get the broader release of more Epstein files. Of course, it didn't pass because not a single Republican voted for it. And yeah, we're still kind of in the holding pattern for Massey's thing in the House. So an interesting thing I saw too is that the victims, the Epstein victims who were at their protest last week, have said if they're not going to release their list, we're going to release our list. And I really hope they do that. You know what I mean? And I hope they do it. And even if Trump's not on their list, I hope they do it regardless, because these victims deserve, closure in any sense that they can. And again, I know conservatives are going to say, what about Clinton? What about Clinton? If Clinton is on this list and he's on this book, I would gladly have him go to jail if it meant, if he was guilty, like, I don't care. Like, I don't care about, it's a great thing that Clinton isn't the leader of my cult.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
100%. And actually, I do believe 2 Republicans voted with the Democrats on the recent Senate vote by Schumer and Paul and Josh Hawley, but all the other Republicans voted against it.
Correction corner.
So yeah, it was 51-49. It failed.
Thank you, Susan Collins, you piece of crap.
Yeah.
What a moderate.
So obviously the efforts in the House are still going on, which, is a similar type of vote to compel the release of the files. I'm kind of wondering if the main issue is that the Republicans are concerned about other famous Republicans that are currently in office appearing in the files, because at this point, there's so much evidence of Trump and Epstein's friendship that if you don't believe that, you're just so in the MAGA world that nothing is going to get to you. There's nothing that could change your mind. But we just heard about a few weeks ago that RFK Jr. was friends with him. We didn't know that before. And then in this recent release of the birthday book, we found out Peter Mendelsohn, who is the UK ambassador to the US, was also in the book and called Epstein his best pal. So I'm starting to think that's the reason. And like you said, I don't think Democrats who are pushing for the release, I don't think they're that worried about it, because most likely Bill Clinton and other old, long gone Democrats would be the only ones implicated. But I think there's other Republicans currently in office that are implicated, and I think maybe that's why they're fighting it so hard. That's my theory anyway.
That's a good theory. And I think even expanding it, definitely their donors could be involved, right? I feel like that's like if a whole network of their donors, and we don't even know, the conservative backing is so deep, and like there's so many like what if the Koch brothers were involved? You know what I mean? Like what if all these guys, like we don't know, and if any of their big funders get out, one, the funders are probably paying them everything under the sun to prevent them from exposing themselves, right? Like if you can lobby them to get rid of something on, airplane junk fees, like then you can definitely lobby them to not release your name as part of affiliation with Epstein, right? So you're probably right. I think that's the most likely. Yeah, you're probably right. And also their terror of the MAGA base, they're so nervous about MAGA coming after them. But you're right, even people like Mitch McConnell who are retiring, you think or Joni Ernst, like you might think like, oh, well, what do they have to lose? They're not going to be in office anymore. So maybe there's something I don't know. I'm sure it'll keep going. I think it's just someone commented this on on YouTube, said like it might, like the Epstein stuff might wax and wane, but it will never go away. I mean, think about how long we've been talking about it. And I think they're right. I think it's just so horrific, and the victims are all alive, and that recipe is just so hard to shake off for these guys.
Yeah.
And another thing that got no news coverage at all this week, and is an absolutely massive announcement, is that Trump this week has announced that he's going to deploy the National Guard to Memphis for the same stuff that he was doing in D.C. Again, the governor hasn't asked for the National Guard. I think it wouldn't be totally shocking if the governor did to comply with Trump in this case, just because, they're likelier to be friendly than in the case of, Chicago or Baltimore or something like that. That's a big deal regardless, because D.C., while the nation's capital and still pretty jarring to have the National Guard be the police of that to an extent, it's not a state, so you can kind of squint your eyes and go, oh, well, yeah. And like, then, the rules around DC are kind of confusing. So I could see why people maybe wouldn't freak out, even though it's the freaking capital. But Memphis is just a city, right? And so what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's definitely an escalation. And, now you're already seeing troops in 3 or 4 cities, and then you're already seeing Trump considering like another 5 to 10. So like, it's not out of the possibility that within a month or two, the National Guard could be in 10 to 15 cities.
Yeah, I don't think
crazy.
That's impossible. Yeah, for sure.
And what a coincidence. Crime is down in Memphis the last few years, just like it's down in Los Angeles and Chicago and Boston.
And Baltimore. All of them. Yeah, basically in the country.
Yeah, Trump called the city deeply troubled. We're going to fix it like we did Washington. Just a fact check, from 2020 to 2024, homicide, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, theft are all down.
Yep.
So none. So it's down. Only motor vehicle theft was the only major category of crime that has gone up during that 4-year period. Perfect timing.
That's why we have the soundboard, ladies and gentlemen. But you're right.
Yeah, I think Trump supporters need to ask themselves, is there a crime wave going on in these cities? Because the evidence says no. And then if no, they need to ask themselves, why is Trump doing this?
100%. And it's just so interesting in the sense, so remember, obviously, in L.A., right, where there was those protests and he sent the guard in without Newsom's request. Newsom sued. The courts then said Newsom was correct. It was illegal for Trump to do that without a government's request. apparently that didn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, obviously the court didn't rule on that till months after the protests had ended. It is very concerning that, once again, it doesn't feel like Trump cares about the courts that much. He hasn't, he's defied them in interesting, like the lower courts more. And it's fuzzy, but yeah, you would think that the Supreme Court saying, hey, that thing you did a few months ago was definitely illegal, you can't do that, would stop him from doing that, period. But of course he doesn't care.
Right. And I just have no faith in the Supreme Court
No.
disagreeing with them anymore. It seems like they find some niche excuse to rule that what he's doing is okay every time a case makes it up there.
And one of the more interesting things that happened a few weeks ago, Jesse mentioned this a couple weeks back on the Wednesday show, that there was this court case that said that, lower courts couldn't do injunctions of federal policy. So basically, like, if Trump signed some crazy federal, like, we're not going to give grants to Harvard anymore. You know how we were seeing, like, a Rhode Island judge would veto that and it would get paused or whatever and all this stuff. So the Supreme Court said that can't happen anymore. And it's so interesting about what the worst case of that, what that implies. Because, of course, I don't think Trump will do this, but who knows, right? But, like, imagine he said something like, he wrote an executive order that said, like, slavery is now legal, right? That would mean now that every single district court would have to say that was, for it to be truly stopped. And it just shows you how dangerous that could be if the federal government goes wild. So that was probably an underrated Supreme Court ruling that only happened a few weeks ago that makes it harder to slow down massive illegal action at the executive branch.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, another thing that really went under the radar this week was that, we talked a lot about Texas and the gerrymandering, the redistricting maps over the few weeks. We saw the Texas Democrats fleeing and, the FBI having a tough time finding them, even though they were literally online. And actually, I have a thought about that I will pin for now. But this is also happening in Missouri. And so the Missouri Senate has passed a Trump-backed redistricting plan. So the map hasn't been redistricted, but it's advanced to do basically the exact same thing that happened in Texas, but to happen in Missouri, to try to guarantee more House seats by making the Republicans more consolidated in various districts. Again, I know we're going to hear people go, oh, well, the Democrats do this all the time. What about Newsom? We've covered the Newsom thing, and obviously we don't like gerrymandering, period. It's just not usually in the middle of a decade, and it's almost never backed by the president.
Yeah, exactly. So instead of Missouri having 6 Republicans and 2 Democrats in the House, the redistricting, which involves splitting up Kansas City, so you're dividing the Democratic areas, so they're minorities in 2 different districts, would result in 7 Republicans and 1 Democrat. So it's a gain. It would be a gain of 1 to the House. And it's obviously not accurate because although Missouri is a red state, it's not 7-1 red state, which this is what gerrymandering does. It creates an unfair advantage for the majority, even more so than what their majority actually is. But that's not what Trump thinks. Trump tweeted that a new, much fairer and much improved congressional map has passed the Missouri legislature. Of course, Trump defining fair by how much they like him and support him.
And how much he would benefit. And I heard someone commented on this on the Texas video. I think it's a good time to bring it up. They said, well, look at Massachusetts. They voted like 70-30 or 65-35 Kamala to Trump. How come they have no Republican representatives? And I just want people to know that, like, most of the Republican politicians in Massachusetts would be registered Democrats in the vast majority of states in the country. And the big reason that they don't win is because Massachusetts is progressive and anti-Trump more so than anti-Republican. And I think that is a big weight. And I think that often gets forgotten about. Like, the Democrats in Missouri would not be liberal Democrats in Massachusetts. And California is a different case because California isn't as liberal as Massachusetts either. I think Massachusetts is probably the most progressive state in the country. Maybe New Jersey. I don't know. Rick, do you think that's true? You get what I'm saying? Does this make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think it's up there with like Hawaii. Probably and DC, which doesn't count. But in terms of like presidential voting, DC is always the most democratic. But yeah, no, I think, yeah, it makes sense. And Massachusetts also frequently elects Republican governors.
And we had a senator not so long ago, Scott Brown.
Yeah.
And again, but I don't think Baker would be a conservative in Iowa, or Scott Brown, frankly. I don't like these guys aren't. Even Mitt Romney had to racket up his conservativeness a lot, like when he ran for president, because he was a different kind of cat when he was in Mass.
Right.
But anyway, continuing on. So this it is true that the Kirk, while a massive deal, it did swallow the news this week. This is a big deal, I think. So we talked about how the U.S. was kind of bringing, vessels, military boats around Venezuela a few weeks ago. So they ended up sinking a small vessel off the coast of Venezuela, killing 11 people. The U.S. government has said that they were gang members and heading towards the U.S. for distributing drugs or something, or violence. I don't know. It turns out that reports are saying that they were heading back to Venezuela. And even if you think that isn't true, what are we, policing the oceans now? Like, what? Like, that's not, we don't own the ocean, and how would you have known that? I just think, what does this mean? Like, we're going to be patrolling the coasts of countries we don't like and just shooting boats down, killing people. 11 people died. And again, maybe they were gang members. I don't know. I don't know why that would be the business of the U.S. And I thought we were only focusing on the U.S. now.
Right. Right, exactly. Like, this is the job for a country's own domestic crime-fighting agencies.
Or maybe on the same freaking continent. Job. Maybe. Like, we're not even on the continent.
Right. Like, Senator Jack Reed said it well. He said, "Our armed forces are not law enforcement agencies. They are not empowered to hunt down suspected criminals and kill them without trial." Which is true. Like, I understand that when you're talking about terrorism and, like, let's say launching an attack against Al-Qaeda in Iraq or something, like the argument there, which, I'm not saying I agree with, and it totally depends on the instance, but the argument there is that, like, they were going to imminently attack the United States, those people, if we didn't strike them first. But the argument with these are drug traffickers that aren't anywhere near the United States. So I don't really know what the argument is. I guess the argument is if they successfully went to the United States, distributed the drugs, then the long-term effects that can have on our country, I guess. But again, like, this is domestic crime caught near Venezuela. Like, we shouldn't be policing other countries.
And think about it if it happened the other way around, right? Think about if there was a boat and it was off the coast of freaking North Carolina or whatever, and a Canadian military vessel sunk it, killing 11 Americans, and they were like, well, they were criminals. Would we just sit there and not care? Like, you know what I mean? That'd be a national outrage. So I don't understand why the U.S. gets different rules than other countries do. Like, imagine a French military vessel shot down a boat of civilians, and they were like, well, they were criminals, and who knows, they could have been coming to France. Like,
right.
Like you wouldn't, like, that's not okay. Like, you can't, I just, and like, it's so anti this whole, like, we're going to get uninvolved from foreign conflicts bullshit that we've been hearing for so long. From both parties, frankly, but especially the right.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, it's pretty weird. Another interesting story this week. So there's this thing called the Nation's Report Card, which has been happening since 2005. And effectively what it is I think it's by the Department of Education. And they evaluate the nation's, like, reading, writing, math, just like basically basic reading and basic math abilities to try to get a handle of how our public schools are doing. And yeah, the report card came out and it wasn't good. We were getting detention ladies and gentlemen. We got the worst 12th grade reading of all time since they've been doing this, and we're down 22% in math. And the report actually called the results sobering and said the nationwide decline in every academic field. And that seems to track with what's happening. I mean, we're really, really falling apart, and it seems like a great time to dismantle the Department of Education. I don't know. Maybe you could argue it's not working. We're fucking idiots. Like,
yeah, exactly. And yeah, the department, so the sub-department within the Department of Education that does this report card, the Institute for Education Sciences, that's one that has had major cuts and laid off more than half of all of their staff since Trump took office again.
Great.
So they're the ones that are measuring these tests. So we know how Trump hates reports that give him negative numbers in any way. So with the cuts already and then this coming out, he's going to do like he did with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is just put a crony in place that will say otherwise, or just probably dismantle it altogether. So there's no chance of a negative report.
I mean, he already put Lindsey McMahon in charge of the Department of Defense, to Education, wife of WWE executive Vince McMahon. I didn't know there was a very strong tie to the WWE and education. Why would that qualify her? It's funny. It's one of those things that when you look at that and then you combine it with how much we're rejecting international academics and international students and, trying to like focus on getting Americans employed, it just seems like clearly the issue is American education. And it's one of those things, though, similarly to healthcare, that it's not in the Constitution, so it's the 10th Amendment rights and it's up to the states. And I just don't know how you fix the education systems of every state when the states continually eat themselves alive.
Right. And if you want to ruin your country's future economic growth, you can make young people as dumb as possible and then not let in any educated foreign workers.
Yeah.
It just seems like a total disaster for the future of the economy.
And it's why the student loan stuff is such a sin, because, people go, how come we don't have to pay these, blah, 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 blah. Like, because an investment in someone's education is a good investment for the country. We want people who are really smart working here because they make more money for the economy. No, it's even the most cynical, just pure money argument would say this is stupid and a really bad sign. And honestly, I'm sure no one will care because this country is becoming more and more just anti-intelligence in general. We hate academics, we hate specialists now, and we now are just developing a broader disdain for people who say they're smart.
Right.
And in fact, I remember Trump saying, he goes, at the campaign rally, remember, he said, I love the poorly educated.
Yeah.
He goes, I love the poorly educated. I win with the poorly educated every time. What was the direct quote? I want to read the quote. He goes, we won with the young, we won with the old, we won with the highly educated, we won with the poorly educated. I love the poorly educated. So maybe this isn't a freaking surprise. Another news story that I saw a lot on social media this week was this Supreme Court decision on the ICE raids, in particular on if race/ethnicity could be used to justify ICE arrests. And, I saw a lot of people online saying that it was ruled in a way that is going to do that. It's not totally true, but it's not totally not true. I guess there's a little bit more nuance to it. It's saying that if someone does that, it's not inherently illegal, but it's not saying it's definitely legal either, I guess. Rick, you're better at interpreting these things than I am. I don't know. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it seems like they're saying that they can allow ICE agents to use apparent race or ethnicity or speaking Spanish as potential evidence. Not the only evidence, obviously. It's not saying you can just indefinitely detain anybody that is Hispanic, but it's not saying you definitively cannot use this.
Yeah, that's great.
Which it should.
Of course, yeah.
And
of course, yeah. 100%.
And it is like the court case is really complicated, and there are legal technicalities that could have played a role. Like the Trump administration is arguing that the people suing him did not have standing in the first place. So there's all sorts of like complex arguments about legal standing. But overall, I think it's like what we said. The court documents said that ICE is using 4 criteria to see who when considering stopping somebody for an immigration inquiry. 1 is apparent race or ethnicity. 2 is speaking Spanish or English with an accent. 3 is presence at a particular location, such as a car wash or day laborer site. And 4 is the type of work the person does. So basically just 4 of the simplest and most prejudiced
the nastiest things you could possibly say. Yeah,
it's like you ask somebody, what are your stereotypes of a Mexican undocumented immigrant? They would give you that list.
Oh, it's awful.
It's awful. And Justice Sotomayor said in her dissent, it's a grave misuse of the court's emergency power. We should not live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, and appears to work in a low-wage job.
Yeah, you would think. So I guess it's something to keep an eye. It's something to keep an eye on, I guess, to see if this ticks up. I'm sure. And then there's like also the legal precedent, and then there's also like the functional precedent, right? Like I'm pretty sure that ICE agents are doing that anyways. Like I don't. To some extent, not every ICE agent, obviously, but like I'm sure that is not because that happens with cops. Just normal cops. Sometimes we hear about it all the time.
Course.
So, like the idea that isn't happening, and ICE, which is just everything wrong with the police on steroids, it's weird. Another interesting story this week. We talked about it a few weeks ago when a Republican icon, John Bolton. Do you think icon's fair to describe John Bolton?
In a way.
Hero of the party. GOP daddy himself, John Bolton. He had his house raided by the FBI, and a news story came out this week that said when they raided his house, they took a bunch of crap, including folders called Trump 1 through 4. And that's all we know, but I wonder what's in those damn folders, man.
Yeah, seriously. And hopefully the folders are referring to years 1 through 4 of his first term and not terms 1 through 4, right?
Or just four binders of all the shit he has on him.
Right. Like he planned on only having one, but it got so filled that he had to start naming them with Roman numerals.
Just hundreds and hundreds of pages on Trump, just that he...
Trump XVI.
Tutus motus, it's all in Latin. It's encoded with lemon juice to get the secret codes. It's a pretty shocking and eye-catching folder. Oh yeah, I'm sure we'll never. Do you think we'll ever know what's in the folders, or will that ever come out?
I don't think so. I mean, he was in the midst of writing another book about Trump. Obviously, a lot of people think his first book, which was a tell-all book of being in the first term of the administration, is seen as the motive for Trump going after him now, because Bolton was once an ally and then turned on Trump. So, I mean, if he is totally cleared of charges, I guess he's likely to release that book, the second book. But like the reality is, he's probably going to be caught up in the courts for the next 10 years.
Yeah, and he's an older man. I don't even know if he'll make it.
Yeah.
And one thing before, this is a wider topic that I've been thinking about, talking about the FBI. One of my first thoughts with the Kirk shooting, and again, maybe this is unfair, is that doesn't it feel like these killers have been going undetected for longer periods of time? I know you could say, it's a few days, but I feel like we're getting a lot of manhunts recently. I feel like that wasn't, I know it was true in like the 80s with like the Zodiac killer and serial killers and stuff like that, but like in modern era, doesn't it kind of feel like, I don't know, is the FBI getting worse? I don't know if they're getting worse. But...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this Charlie Kirk shooting, there was 2,000 people at the event, and nobody saw him. Nobody saw the shooter leave. They claim they had leads. They didn't have any leads. It took them almost 24 hours for them to find a gun that was right next to the building he was on. And then in the end, the FBI never found him. He was turned in through his father and working with the youth minister, as well as help from the shooter's roommate as well. So it is funny seeing Trump then praise the FBI for their work on this after the shooter was caught. And it's like, literally, what did they do? Did they do anything?
They
to
did
find him?
nothing. Yeah, it's weird because, come on, you know what I mean? And like, it felt the same way when, I don't know, I just feel like typically in the past we've seen within a day or two, stuff has, people have an idea. But even with like Luigi, they didn't know. They found him at McDonald's. You know what I mean? And they had a video of him. I just feel like these guys are like lingering on longer. And yeah, didn't the FBI arrest that old guy and say this is the shooter, and it ends up not? Didn't they ruin like multiple people's lives in the interim with this Kirk case? Like there was those pictures of that old dude who kind of looked like Bernie a little bit, like who they said was the shooter, and it wasn't him.
Yeah, you got to feel bad for that guy too. He just happened to be like an old guy going to an event in a college, so people just assumed he was the shooter, I guess.
Yeah, what the fuck was that about?
Yeah.
Like, that's so bad. And I mean, even the fact that the FBI was trying to look for the Texas Democrats and couldn't find them. And I know people go, oh, he's a fucking hack because he doesn't like Kash Patel. Yeah, you're right. I don't like Kash Patel. And I have no faith that a person with literally no FBI training could do a good job. Also, I'll tell you this, Rick, before we go to the last topic. They had just fired the head of Salt Lake City's FBI unit just weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
Who had been in office for years and years and years. So it's almost like firing highly experienced people has consequences. I mean, again, I don't think it would have prevented the shooting, but at least the catching of the shooting,
Right.
But yeah. And lastly, before we go to the culture corner, we have the FDA announced this week that they're going to present data, I think literally next week, claiming the COVID vaccines potentially killed 25 children at a CDC meeting. I don't know enough about science to know if this is true or not. I am suspicious because I think the person in charge of the HHS knows just as much about science as I do. That being said, lots of talks about vaccines nowadays. You know what I mean? Like out of them, regardless, Like it seems like they're doing everything in their power to freak people out about vaccines.
Yeah, seriously. And it makes RFK's committee hearings, nomination hearings, before he was sworn in that much more laughable, because he spent an entire week swearing that he wasn't anti-vax and it wasn't his sole focus, and now it's his sole focus.
He doesn't even talk about these freaking artificial dyes and pesticides, all that crap. Like that, all the people I met personally who was sympathetic to the Maha stuff always talked about the food stuff. What food stuff? It's
Right,
only vaccine stuff. What are we talking about food stuff?
And you would think that a guy who spent his professional career outside of vaccines, being an environmental lawyer, you would think he would be trying to work on pollution, but he's not interested in that at all.
Exactly. And I said this during the nomination to people, not on the show because the show didn't exist, but I wouldn't pick him, but he's qualified to be in charge of the FDA, because he at least has years and years of environmental law backgrounds. He has literally no qualifications for medical science. And that
Right.
And yeah, the FDA controls a lot of the stuff that the Maha people want to focus on. But anyway, yeah, it's a shame as we watch our CDC burn in flames, the most important medical institution in the world, But yeah, that's the news this week. And everyone's favorite corner. Wah, wah. Where's that? I need to get a wah, wah. But yeah.
It's time for Rick's Cultural Corner.
Thank you, Linda.
Linda, you look great.
So I thought, very cultural topic. I thought we'd talk about Saudi Arabia's current strategy about entertainment and sports that I think most of our listeners will at least be familiar with some of this. But basically, Turki al-Sheikh, who's very high up in Saudi Arabian's government, he's chairman of the General Entertainment Authority. He created this 2030 strategy where they basically are making Saudi Arabia into an entertainment and sports tourist destination. There's been a million examples of this the past 5 years, but many people will know. Just last night, they hosted a massive boxing fight, Canelo versus Crawford, and they pay famous influencers like Mr. Beast to fly there and record content. There's the Saudi Pro League with soccer that has signed Cristiano Ronaldo and other soccer stars. They've hosted famous, massive Formula One races, and they most famously, what kind of started off this debate publicly a few years ago, was they launched the Live Golf League, a professional golf tour featuring, the best golfers in the world. So some will be familiar with this phrase, but there's this phrase sports washing now.
I've never heard that term before. What does that mean?
A play on whitewashing, but sports washing refers to the practice of using sports to improve a country's reputation, often to distract from human rights concerns, political controversies, or other negative aspects of its governance. So it will do things like host major sporting events, pay famous influencers and athletes to appear, all in the purpose of promoting their country as this great place to live and visit, and to distract you from the fact that they are routinely executing journalists, suppressing free speech, and just have an overall disastrous human rights record domestically. So that's kind of the concept of sports washing.
This definitely does this, right? I mean, why are we saluting the flag before football games? If not, I feel like, don't we do that? Not because we're hiding, massacring journalists and stuff like that, but I feel like you gotta feel like sports distract us from what the hell's going on to some extent, right? Or I'm cutting you off again, but what do you think?
No,
about
that? I wasn't even thinking about that. That's a great point. I think the difference is in the U.S., sports are distracting people from. In the U.S., the sports are distracting U.S. citizens from bad things that the government's doing domestically and internationally. I think the concept of sports washing is about changing people's minds in other countries.
Yeah, like they hate you, but they're like, damn, they've got a killer soccer team.
Right.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like 10 years ago, the impression of Saudi Arabia by many Americans was that it's a dangerously religious Muslim country, of which almost all of the 9/11 perpetrators came from. The Saudi royalty previously funded Osama bin Laden and his organization. So that was kind of the image of Saudi Arabia 10 years ago. And now they're turning it around, and you're seeing them, of course, build these insane skyscrapers as well. Like, they're just transforming the country so it's like focus on these amazing events we're having here and how much our country is growing, and ignore
they're trying to go full Dubai.
Record.
Well,
Right.
Dubai is a great example of that, right? No one ever talks about how those skyscrapers in Dubai got built with Indian slaves, basically. Yeah, no, that's a great example. They're going full Qatar, Qatar rather. A lot of these smaller oil states, I feel like, have done
Right,
that
and like
pretty well. Frankly, they've really changed the narrative. Qatar is one of the most best examples. I feel like, usually Dana White's there.
right, exactly. And like it's like they'll host this boxing event, and then they'll pay Mr. Beast millions of dollars just to go and record funny videos. And it's like, that's where it gets creepy. Like, the US does tons of terrible things with propaganda, but like, the US isn't like paying Mr. Beast to like stand next to Trump and record videos at like a Yankees game. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Not yet. Not
yet.
They can only afford Kid Rock.
Right. The amount of money they shell out, like they're paying boxers $100 million each to box each other, that were getting paid like $20 million each in the US. And like the question is like, why? Like, why would the Saudi government be paying billions of dollars for these sporting events if it just because they love sports? Like, no, it's obviously because they're trying to restore their image internationally. But there's a new one in the news. this week, the Riyadh Comedy Festival, which is
What?
taking place over 2 weeks starting on September 26th, and it's featuring the most famous stand-up comedians in the world that will perform in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, including Kevin Hart, Louis C.K., Sebastian Maniscalco, Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, Andrew Schultz, Mark Normand, Sam Morril, Chris DiStefano, Hannibal Buress, Jessica Kirson. There's a lot of them.
Why aren't we invited?
Exactly.
What the fuck?
And it's being hosted by Turki Al-Sheikh, the same guy that is
Naturally.
overseeing all of these. And it's a little bit different than sports, I think, because comedians see themselves as these truth tellers who aren't afraid to say anything, and yet they're being paid millions of dollars to go perform in a country with extreme restrictions on speech that are likely going to say you're not allowed to make jokes about the government here. And they're just throwing that out the window for money.
Or Islam, probably. Like,
Right.
you know, like, I hate to see Louis on that list, man. I was hoping it was just going to be Kevin Hart.
Same.
10
And
times.
Bill
Burr.
Burr. Yeah. Like Chappelle and Kevin Hart. It's not surprising.
or freaking I'm surprised John Mulaney isn't there. It's like or you know, more mainstream, very popular.
Right. But like Jessica Kirson's
Mark Norman,
a
Sam
lesbian.
Morril.
She's a lesbian, which is illegal to be a lesbian in
You think
Saudi
she's gonna
Arabia.
say I'm a fucking lesbian? Like, do you think, like, could you see this going bad though? I guess we have to watch when is the performance? This is crazy. You're right. This is totally different from sports. This is a big step for Saudi Arabia, right? Like
because sports, your whole job as a professional athlete is to get paid millions and go do a sport, and that's it. A comedian, your job is to, like, they see themselves as the beacons of free speech, and you know, Joe Rogan has called himself the wall fighting against wokeism.
Oh my God. Also, a name conveniently not on the list. Where's Rogan?
True. But it's like Dave Chappelle has made estimated $100 million from Netflix since 2019. Does he need the money?
I don't know what he's going to talk about. Is he going to do his trans jokes?
Yeah,
Like,
because if he's criticizing them, it's okay.
they're going to go, let's go. And they're going to do it to a sea of guys in those freaking, like, chic outfits.
Right, exactly.
Who's the audience? They're going to have Mr. Beast in the audience for sure. I feel like Mr. Beast is... Well, did you know... So YouTube hosted an NFL game last week for the first time ever. And Mr. Beast basically ran the programming.
Oh, God.
He did the halftime show.
Why?
He's basically the face of the world now. He was like, we're going to launch these guys out of a cannon. Like, Mr. Beast is now like...
So tired of his dumb face.
Do you think he's the most famous person? Like, is he like... Who's more famous?
He's the biggest YouTuber ever.
And YouTube is the biggest platform, right?
Right.
Do you think he's more popular than, you know... How many politicians are more popular than Mr. Beast? Like, you ask a stranger, name, you know, Lisa Murkowski. How many people do you think know her versus how many people know Mr. Beast? It's not even close, right? Like,
no, it's not even close. And I assume it's younger people because I don't know any of my friends that watch his videos, even though he's like in his 30s, I think. It's not like he's young, but I don't know. So I guess my question for you is, in this hypothetical, you're a famous stand-up comedian, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you have...
Not currently, in the hypothetical.
In this hypothetical.
Yeah, we are not famous. You can see the show numbers.
You have $20 million in assets. So let's say you have a $5 million house, you have 15 mil in the bank or whatever, right? So you're a very successful stand-up comedian. The reality is, I think Dave Chappelle and Kevin Hart are 10 times more rich than that, but for this hypothetical, let's say you have $20 million in assets. Would you perform at the Saudi Arabia Comedy Festival for $1 million?
It's a good question. Saudi Arabia Comedy Festival. I mean, I'm thinking about it.
Could be a tough hang.
It would be a tough... It could be a tough crowd. I mean, I would do terribly. I want to say no. right? Like that, my gut wants to go, no, you wouldn't do it. Would I do it though? It's one of those things, when people say, how much money would it take to do like, some random thing, and like you're like, oh, dude, $1 trillion. And then if they actually brought the money out, you're like, yeah, $1,000, I'm down. Could I really turn that down? I don't know. I hope not. I hope I wouldn't. I hope so, rather. But it's a good question. I think morally, I guess the real question, is it morally wrong to do it? Probably not. I probably would do it. I probably would. I wouldn't. I don't know. I feel indifferent about it. I probably wouldn't, but I could see myself doing it depending on my lack of discipline or self. If I had the discipline, I'd like to not do it though. I think that's the right thing to do, is not to do it. What do you think? I mean, how do you feel? I feel like it's wrong, but could you control yourself?
Of course, I can't say for sure in that situation, but the big things for me is these people are already all rich, right?
Yeah, no, you're 100% right.
Yeah, we're not asking you right now if you were asked to go perform The Lonely Liberal live for $1 million.
I would definitely do that.
Right. It's going from $0 to $1 million is much different than $20 to $21 million.
Of course, yeah, the financial thing is ridiculous. Yeah.
And like some of the comedians have been asked about it, and a lot of them have pointed to like, I don't agree with what the U.S. is doing, especially in regards to supporting Israel, but I still perform all over the United States. But the big difference for that is they're not being paid by the U.S. government to perform in the United States. They're being paid by ordinary citizens through Ticketmaster or whatever in the normal process. Like, this is, to me, it's different when the guy signing your paycheck is literally part of the Saudi royal family.
Yeah, 100%. You're completely right. Yeah, I completely agree with that. 100%.
Because then it seems like you're endorsing a lot of what the country's doing. Just because you're performing in the United States, that doesn't have anything to do with the U.S. government.
No, and it's because a lot of these countries in the Middle East and other places, but they have these wealth funds, right? The Saudis have the wealth fund where they pull out for these things, which is the government funding, and it's basically funded just by their oil revenue, effectively. And actually, you saw Trump and the Republicans flirt with the idea of creating one for the U.S., like a U.S. wealth fund. And I think if they did that, they would do this exact same thing, because that's how you do it. You take it out of that pot. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, though. It's totally different. And yeah, Saudi Arabia is one of the most viciously conservative places in the world, right? I mean, they just only a few years ago gave women the right to drive cars, I think. I think that was really like 2019, right?
Yeah.
So that's no good. And they still have a lot of brutal. But you're right. It's such a great topic because it's so real, right? Like, they're trying to build that line city in the middle of the desert. They're trying to look wicked cool right now.
Yeah, I don't think that thing is ever going to get built, but the designs are interesting.
Well, and have they talked to like people like Burr and Louie yet? Like, have they? Because those two are pretty progressive, not progressive, but like liberal leaning guys. I know the audience is going Louie, but
right?
Like,
no, and especially Burr lately has been like more openly like anti-MAGA than like a lot of people expect. Like, he's lost a lot of fans because, he's seen as this like politically correct blue collar guy. So he's like lost a lot of Trump supporters through the years because he's so openly against that, which makes me respect him even more. But no, I don't think they haven't commented on it at all. Jim Jeffries was asked about it. He said, yeah, one reporter was killed by the government. It's not a hill I'm going to die on.
What the fuck?
Tim Dillon was the one where I said, I kind of alluded to. Tim Dillon said, I'm living in a country right now that is endorsing another country's behavior that I don't agree with. So who cares? So he's saying because he lives in the United States where the government supports the Israeli government, that means, like, to me, that's totally different.
That's
than
apples to
getting
orange. That's dumb as hell. That's so stupid. Yeah, that's fucking stupid.
Getting paid by an extremely dangerous government itself. Chris DeStefano blamed it on his wife. He said he was leaning against it, and his wife said, we're getting married. We just got a house. You have to take the money. Really threw her under the bus.
Jesus Christ, yeah.
So, sorry, I'm going to commit human rights violations in the Middle East, but it's because my wife needs the paycheck.
My wife said, how the hell will I afford this? What the fuck? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, other than Saudi, like a country like that, I mean, it's basically just like North Korea, right? Like that's higher on the list of human rights violations on a regular basis. I mean, also Saudi Arabia is literally at war with Yemen right now and doing pretty nasty stuff there too. So
right, it's just like there's the whole BDS movement, which fights against, you know, any sort of investment or spending money in Israel in any way, which is great and makes sense. But like, there's a lot of attention paid to musicians and comedians going to Israel. And like, there's a huge blowback now if they do that. And most of them no longer perform in Israel. But again, like the Israeli government wasn't bringing them in. Like, I understand that. And I think it's good overall to publicize the atrocities that Israel is committing. But like, that is it. Even that's different because it's not the Israeli government starting a golf league so they can can have Tiger Woods play in their country and get favorable PR, like, which is what Saudi Arabia is doing it. Like, I think it's a line that, you know, shouldn't be crossed. But at this point, you already had the most famous athlete on the planet, arguably Ronaldo, and now you're having the most famous comedians to perform there. So it seems like famous people don't seem to care about it. I don't know.
Well, the U.S. has a lot of American liberals have a complicated relationship with how to criticize hyper-conservative Islamic countries because they don't want to come off offensive to the cultures of the Middle Eastern places that are still very conservative. And I understand that it's complicated, but I think, you know, yeah, it does. It also does kind of feel like a double standard to some extent, but it's hard to say. Maybe, I mean, it would be interesting to know about Dubai, for example. I know UAE is a lot smaller, but have they actually become more progressive over time? I don't know. I don't know enough about the Middle East, frankly, to know. But like, is this the beginning phases of like a slow burn towards a more, you know, liberal society? Because then I guess maybe that's how they're justifying it in their head. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'm just trying to give them a benefit of the doubt, but you're probably right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know, dude.
But
You're probably fucking
our
right.
listeners should write in, because I feel like, especially with the sports stuff, like I personally don't watch golf or F1, but those are both massive right now internationally, and I feel like a lot of our listeners watch it. So
yeah,
I would definitely like to hear people's views on this, because it is a complicated issue.
No, but you make a really good. It's really, yeah. It does smell like a double standard somewhere in there. You know, something seems wrong. Yeah, it's good. It's super. Well, I want to talk about this more. But yeah, because we've been talking for a while, let's get to the questions that you got this week, because they're two bangers.
Oh boy.
No, actually, they're wonderful. You got this question this week. And this is, I think you've met him, from Zaid from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
This is a personal
Shout out
question for you.
Zaid.
Yeah. He asked you, what is Rick's favorite video game? Single player, no multiplayer shit. What do you have to say to that?
Ooh. The single player was key, because I've never been a huge gamer.
I know you were
other than playing like games with friends like Super Smash and Mario Kart.
Kirby Air Ride.
Yes. Kirby Air Ride Free Roam, the real ones now.
You know they're coming out with a new one.
Really?
Oh yeah, baby. For the Switch 2, you got to get one.
I'm in.
that game defined your childhood, I feel like.
I witnessed a physical brawl in my basement over a Kirby Air Ride.
Really?
Match, yeah.
What happened? How did that? I feel like it's a pretty zen game.
We used to play the free roam in Kirby Air Ride, where you just fly around the biggest park, and like there's no point to it, but you can like hop on and off your various air rides. And somebody kept killing the other one by just flying into them and destroying their air ride, and then it escalated, and they ended up fighting. Punches were thrown. Yeah, it was. That's a true story.
That game is so peaceful in general. Like,
yeah. the happiest
Them
character.
just free roaming around in a pink blob character, and they're just beating the shit out of each other. So what would you go with?
So even though this is a game I did play multiplayer a lot, I played the single player too, which is James Bond Agent Under Fire.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew you were going to say that. I thought you were going to go GoldenEye or that. I feel like I was in my head. I was like, he's skating the Bond games for sure. I knew it. I was so confident.
GoldenEye is, of course, like the gold standard, but I never had N64. So like I played it at Friends, and Agent Under Fire and Nightfire were the two big ones for the GameCube. That was like the next, those were like the sequels to GoldenEye for N64. So yeah, I'd probably go Agent Under Fire. That's a great question though. I'm trying to think of like, there were certainly internet games like back in the heyday of addictinggames.com, which had like 1,000 games on it.
Totally.
Back in like the, early 2000, like 2000 to 2005, the heyday of online internet games, I definitely got obsessed with some of those. I was really into stick RPG.
What?
For a while.
What is that? I don't even know that.
It's like a 2-dimensional, obviously stick, that design of stick figures. And,
of course you're playing.
But it was like, it was an RPG where like basically you're a normal guy that lives a normal life. Like you like go to your normal job. You like have to buy food. You have to like go to the gym. You walk around this little town. You have to sleep, but like you can like expedite the sleep so you don't have to wait 8 hours. But like you go through like expedited days where you just live life as a normal stick figure.
What's the point?
And the point is just to get money and be happy. Just
slice of life.
Live the American dream.
Stick RPG.
And I would play for hours. I learned how to gamble in that game because I was like 10. There was a casino within the town you could go to. That's how I learned how to play blackjack. You could play the stocks. There was a stock exchange. So I learned about the stock market.
And it's just like a Sims, but it's even more stupid because it's stick figures and just nothing.
Exactly.
Oh my God.
You could like get it like, oh, you didn't like your job, so you quit and then go to the coffee shop, get a job application.
How old were you when you were playing this?
Like 10.
What? You're like going through divorce on stick RPG.
I found out that like out of any of the ways to make money within the game, blackjack was the best. So I got really into blackjack at that age.
Hit me, baby. Yeah. Hold. Stick RPG. You know what? I did not expect. I've never even heard.
I am praying that one of our listeners has heard of this game.
Yeah, if anyone listening has heard of Stick RPG,
you should Google image Stick RPG so you can see like what I'm talking about.
I'm gonna do it right now, and make sure this is a legitimate game. What the hell? It was released 17 years ago. Yeah, basically a stick version of GTA in The Sims. Is it still active? It's still playable, but the community has shrunk over the years. It's considered a good game. 8.8 review.
Yes,
out of 10.
So 5. So it was released 22 years ago.
Oh my God. Yeah, because 5 years ago that guy wrote it and released 17 years ago. You're right. Yeah. You were like 9, 10 years old. Yeah. Oh my God.
That adds up. So yeah.
Yeah, you were an early adapter.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny throughout our, because we were already friends back then. Throughout our 20-something years of friendship, I've never admitted my stick RPG obsession to you.
No, I've never known about that. I didn't even know you did that. This is breaking news.
Thank you, Zaid, for the question.
Yeah, that was seriously. And then you got another one, and this is one from the wild, which my listeners should be called the wild. This is just from John. And I always think when we ever have John and Mary, it's like Joe, Jane Doe. Like, who is this fake name? And this one made me laugh. It's, what does Rick's morning routine look like? Is it different on days that the show is recorded?
4 a.m., throwing a Zyn, going a cold plunge, ice bath. Follow it up with a sauna, some elk meat. I read Jordan Peterson's book again. And then
first round of injections at 7 a.m.
And then I hustle for the next 12 hours.
I beat the shit out of my house. Just break everything.
I go suntan my balls.
With the sunrise, you're there crouched over. Oh my God. Yeah, that makes sense. Does that change on the days of the show?
No, my morning routine, because I work from home most days, my morning routine is pretty minimal because, like, I'm lazy and I could just, like, wake up and basically log on.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there isn't really too much. I will say, so I'm not a coffee drinker. When I wake up, I pour myself a giant thing of ice water. I like really cold water in the morning. That's like my coffee.
Anyone else do that listening to the show? Curious if that's a unique thing, because I've never heard of that before. My dad does something similar, actually. He used to just pound ice water all throughout the day, like very cold.
Yeah, I drink debatably too much water, actually.
Yeah, you drink a lot of water.
Yeah, that's really it. It's not too exciting. Depending on the podcast days, I usually like to read a bunch and make sure I'm like caught up on everything before we record. So some days I'm doing that like in the days leading up to the podcast. Sometimes I'm doing that right before. But yeah, nothing really changes. I wish I could tell you I had like a Dwayne Johnson 3 a.m. I'm hitting the gym hard every morning, but I'd be lying.
On the days of the show, you're just doing his push-ups to failure.
Yeah.
Pull-ups to fail, everything to failure to get ready for the show.
I have to get in my 8 a.m. grunts before we record.
I go to the gym, beat the crap out of a bag, go back home, pour myself a giant glass of ice water.
Find a nerd to bully.
Yeah, just tell someone that they're wrong all day. Just drink.
What's your morning routine?
I don't know. Well, similarly, right? It's more lazy. I'm a big coffee guy, so I drink coffee every morning. But I don't eat breakfast typically, especially if working. But for the days of the show, like, yeah, behind the curtain for the show, we keep a live document where we add different news stories throughout the week. But I do the same with you. I'll like double check and like read more about it, so I have at least something more interesting to say outside of just like the main topic, like the first layer. No, I'm not really a morning workout guy in general. I tend to work out at night or after work. I've never been, not that it would be assumed that we work out in general. I don't know why I'm acting like everyone's like, oh, these dudes just gotta hit the gym. I don't know why I'm acting like that's a must for us. They don't even know what we look like. We could be 500 pounds and drooling all over ourselves right now. Like, people don't.
When do you take your steroids to get that body of yours?
I'm
6 a.m. injection 1.
Injection 1, 8 a.m. Injection 2, 10 a.m. I just run forever. No, I'm not a morning guy, even though I would desperately want to be one. I think it's way better to be a morning person than a night person. But unfortunately, I have the terrible combo of being up late, sleeping poorly, and waking up early. that great recipe. I don't know. Are you a morning person? I feel like you're a little bit better in the morning than I am.
Yeah, when it comes to work, I am. Like, once I'm working, like, I'm more productive in the morning, and then much rather, like, get things done in the morning than afternoon.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I wish I was the other way, though, because it's way better. Morning activities are better to do stuff, for sure, than the night, you know? So, yeah, I would like to actually maybe write us in what you think our morning routine should be. What's the optimal podcasting morning routine? Because clearly Rick and I are lost.
Yes.
Yeah, and we need help. So, yeah. Well, and that'll do it. That's our show. Rick, thank you so much for another killer week. I think this is a banger episode. I think we did it again.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, see you, man.
See ya.
And that's our show, folks. Thank you so much for listening today. If you like the show, please give it a 5-star review, either on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or both. I appreciate both. Or YouTube, comment, like, subscribe. Really comment, though. I'd love to hear what you guys think about all the stuff we talked about today. If you want to write us an email, it is at thelonelyliberalpodcast@gmail.com, or shoot me a message on Instagram or whatever. Like, all that stuff is really great. I want to hear what everyone thinks. We'll be back on Wednesday with another show. So until then, have a lovely, lovely rest of your weekend and early week. See ya. Bye.